Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of your favorite show, Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin. Mike, I guess I didn't mess it up that bad last week because you had me back for another week.
I don't decide this, but I'm fine with it.
Well, we have a lot of questions to get into today. A lot of great questions from our viewers. Our first one is from Jay Roddy, who wants to know, do you think we ran out of gas playing Gonzaga and then Duke? That's a tough back-to-back challenge.
You know, once you get to the Sweet 16 elite level and then on into the Final Four, from the first game to the championship game, any of those transitions, you're going to play two back-to-back tough games with a day off between them. So you can just expect that. Did they run out of gas? Not physically. Maybe emotionally, maybe mentally. If you think back, some of Arkansas's big wins this year, they beat Auburn, then they lost to Alabama. They beat LSU, then they lost to Tennessee.
Tennessee, that's right, yeah.
Then they beat LSU in the SEC tournament and had a one-day turnaround and lost to Texas A&M. So maybe it was a team that kind of had trouble getting up for a big game and then getting back up again.
Yeah.
But I think most of what happened against Duke was they just ran into a team that's loaded with 4- and 5-star players, several guys going to end up in the first round of the NBA draft, and those guys are playing their best basketball right now. Everybody watched Duke earlier in the year. They're better right now. And what they did in particular was they broke Arkansas's defense down both on, from outside and not really outside, that their guards were so quick coming off those ball screens and attacking early part of the lane. 6-foot, 7-foot jumpers, and they're really good at hitting those shots.
Really good.
And then I think they, around the basket, they had that tandem 6'10", 7-foot guy, two of them. And if they didn't make layups, they got a lot of offensive boards and put it back in. There was a really interesting statistic, and I don't have it here with me right now, but they converted a high percentage of their layups, like 70% maybe.
Wow.
And Arkansas was more like 30% on their layups. So they missed a ton of layups. Now, look, you could probably argue that some of those missed layups were fouls.
Yeah, you could definitely make the case for that.
I think that was the difference. They just shot better, and they played really good defense on Arkansas. I think they had a good game plan, zoned them a lot, and kind of forced them to shoot more from the outside. But I also think Arkansas had point guard problems, and most of them had tried several different combinations at the point, and they just didn't seem to get into the flow. And when you don't get assists, you're not necessarily getting wide open shots. Too often the point guard was dribbling around and then dribbled into the middle of pressure and then tried to put up an off-balance shot and didn't go in.
Well, they're taking tough shots.
Yeah, and they hit shots, but they didn't do it consistently. We saw them get behind 6, 8 points, get it back down, then it would go back up to 10, back down to 6, then up to 12. They just didn't play the consistent basketball on both ends of the floor that Duke did.
I completely agree with you, Mike, especially when you said emotionally gassed. I think that is very true with this team because they've had to battle. It's hard to listen to all the noise all season long and get in the right mindset, right? And go, hey, all right, we're now have to face a Duke team. They've battled all year long.
And they really were having to overachieve to win some games like Gonzaga, whereas a team like Duke doesn't necessarily have to overachieve. They just need to play up to whatever their level of talent is.
And you got Coach K's final season. There was a lot of things that those Duke players were playing for. I
absolutely think it's affecting their players. I think they're rising to another level as they realize they can be a part of sending their coach out on a high note.
Exactly. They're playing for something higher than just, a win in the NCAA tournament. Let's move on to our next question. St. Louis Hog thinks there was a reason for those missed layups. He says, I really hate Duke. It really stinks when we aren't allowed to play defense and the other team can play as aggressive as they want. All I wanted was an evenly called game so the players could decide, but you rarely ever get that when playing Duke unless you're an old school blue blood.
Yeah, you always hear these complaints. I'm not sure that's completely valid. I thought from a standpoint of just the number of fouls called, it wasn't a mismatch, it wasn't uneven. I will concede that there were some key fouls that were called and some key situations where there weren't fouls called on Duke that did come into question for me. in particular, I felt like that Jay Will, 2 of those fouls were really questionable, and that really put him in a position of having to go to the bench, which is when Arkansas developed their problems.
Yeah.
So those 2 calls could have absolutely affected the course of the game. And then their guys, you know, they got away with some that were fouls, but then when Arkansas, I thought, played pretty good defense.
Yeah.
You know, it gets called and it's not called on the other end. So would that have made a difference in the game? Maybe not. Yeah. But it would have made it closer and more interesting for sure.
Yeah, and everybody said before the game, you're just not going to get the calls to go your way. I mean, you know, when I talked to Scotty Thurman, you know, he said we're just not going to get favorable calls against a Duke team that, you know, everybody wants to see go to the Final Four.
I don't think it would be just really lopsided, but again, what you really notice when you watch a lot of basketball is key calls in certain situations can make a huge difference. So you can have a similar number of fouls, but when are those fouls called?
Right.
And who are those fouls called on?
Yeah, exactly.
And that can make a difference.
Exactly. Moving on to the next question. Pig's Feet asks, is the game too fast for the officials, or are they being influenced by wanting to be part of an upset?
It's interesting. That question was submitted after Arkansas had played Vermont and New Mexico State. So here's a Hog fan saying, hey, they were biased in favor of the underdog.
Exactly.
So you can't have it both ways.
Exactly.
You know?
We would just
are they responding to the you know, the higher seeded team, the better ranked team? Are they for the underdogs? Whatever. Here's the thing, and it's just my opinion. I don't think there are very many officials out there that will openly go out there and be biased for one team or another. They're trying to do a job, and they know that if it became obvious, they wouldn't be officiating.
No.
Here's the real issue to me. Referees are not robots.
Right.
We're all subject to emotion, and sometimes you can do something when you don't even know you're doing it.
Right.
And I think that's where it comes into play.
Yeah.
You weren't really trying to give Duke a break, but you maybe see it a little differently. This guy's more talented. He probably didn't foul there.
Yeah.
This guy, I don't know. He's not quite as good. Maybe he couldn't have made that play without fouling. So you just get the mental part of it there. And so I don't think it's just somebody intentionally trying to give another team a break because they're Duke or whatever. But there's just psychological things at work there that maybe you don't know about.
Exactly, and sometimes, you know, we talk about they're not robots; they miss things. They're humans. They're humans as well. You know, my dad always says this. You know, as he's a basketball coach, sometimes they're giving some makeup calls there. You know, some makeup calls for some bad calls earlier in the game.
I'll tell you a quick story about when I was a kid. There was a guy in our hometown that was really supportive of the Little League program.
Okay.
He was a teacher at school.
Yeah.
But he was always out there. He was a part of pretty much all of the grounds crew. He would go out there and fertilize the grass and do all the whatever they do with pokes holes in the grass and mow the grass and keep the lines done. They did that with lime back then, and he would put the lime down and make the lines and do the batters where you come into the batter's box, and he did all that stuff. And then he was also either an umpire or one of the umpires out on the baselines, and he did that all the time. Well, he's a local guy. He'd go into like the East Side Cafe where everybody hung out, and these people would be chewing him out because he called their kid out on strikes, and it'd get really nasty. And I remember thinking, why does he want to put up with this stuff? And he had a really good personality. He didn't ever let that affect him. But I remember thinking, I told my dad one time, there's no way I would do that.
Yeah.
It would just be like, are you kidding me? Somebody's always chewing me out. So I think
it's a hard life.
Referees don't get enough credit, umpires or whatever. I wouldn't want to be one.
No.
I can't even imagine what it would be like. But there's something different about those guys because they put up with that all the time and never seem to get affected by it.
Exactly. Got to give them some credit sometimes where credit is due, right? Well, Team Otis asks, is Musselman leading the team to a championship, or is he just good at making the tournament? Will Arkansas win a championship under Musselman? It's not a bad question.
Yeah, he's basically asking, you know, is Musselman Mark Few of Gonzaga? Is he just going to get you this far and never get any further?
Hey, no.
Or is he a Nolan Richardson that can get to the final, get to the Elite Eight, then get to the Final Four, then win a national championship?
Well, Nolan says yes.
Yes, and there are a whole bunch of Hall of Fame coaches that never won a national championship.
Yeah.
Eddie Sutton is one of them.
Oh, yeah.
Eddie Sutton's philosophy was always, he said this many times, if you keep going back to the NCAA tournament, sooner or later it'll be your time, it'll click.
Yeah.
So his idea was you just always had to keep doing it, and then everything would go your way one particular year and you win it. But he never won it. I liked Nolan's approach because Nolan's approach was when he went to the Final Four in 1990 and got beat by Duke, and then Duke got beat by UNLV.
Yeah.
He looked at what his deficiencies were, and he looked at what Duke deficiencies were and why UNLV won that game. And he went out, set about recruiting the things that he needed to play his particular brand of basketball.
Right.
I like what Musselman is doing. We've talked about this before. Arkansas had a couple of big problems this year. They didn't have a true point guard. At sometimes it didn't hurt them as bad as it did at other times, but definitely in the game against Duke it hurt them. They didn't shoot very well at times, and they didn't shoot well against Duke. You need some pure shooters, and they didn't have
and some that can shoot well from the outside.
Consistent pure shooters. I mean, you look at Amude. This guy scored 21 points a game before he transfers in here. Yeah, what did he average, 12 or 13?
Yeah, but in tournament time,
he comes up a little bit, but not what maybe you thought he was.
Yeah. No.
So what is Musselman's approach? Well, he's gone out and recruited shooters. All these guys that are coming in are shooters. And most of them can dribble and create their own shots, so he's doing that. Doesn't really have a true point guard yet. And we're taping this show. They're still waiting on the word of maybe one of the better point guards in the country. To get him, they've solved the problem. If they don't get him, I'm told that Musselman will go into the portal and get an experienced point guard. I also think he wants an experienced big to go along with Jalen Williams, so that Arkansas Williams doesn't get, tag teamed by two bigs in a lot of games next year. So to me, Muss is looking at, okay, what caused us to have problems? What caused us not to advance?
Right.
And he's already ahead of the curve, trying to make sure that next year and the year after, whatever, he doesn't have those issues.
Exactly, and that's why there's a lot of people out there, a lot of those national media outlets saying, hey, make sure you watch this Arkansas team in the future and even next season. So
I mean, I can't say he'll win a national championship, but that's the way you do it.
Yeah.
You look at each time you get close and don't make a step, we got to go into the Final Four. If you get in the Final Four, what if you don't win it? What if you, Eddie Sutton got him in '78 to the Final Four, then lost, and they used to have a third place game, and he won that. But what caused that? I don't think he had enough depth.
Yeah.
So again, you go and you try to solve the problems that you have.
Exactly. Well, Giles asks, what do you think about the comments by our fans on social media after the loss to Duke? I thought it was inspiring. Almost none of the negative piling on that you get from fans. Most schools, just lots of support. #WooPigSuey.
I would agree with that. I read social media a lot, both Twitter and Facebook, and a lot of Razorback fans on Twitter, about 1,000 of them that I've combed through what they're saying on their own, with their friends on their own Facebook pages. And then we, of course, have our Pig Trail Nation Facebook page with 60, 70,000 people on there. You go through there and you don't find, I was surprised at the lack of negative comments because it's usually out there. I've got 3 examples, and I want to put them up just because I think these are representative of what you're reading on social media after that loss. Jan Bratton Jewell posted, "Thanks for another amazing season. It's been so much fun to be a Hog fan. So proud of this team." Bradley Townsend says, "Thank you, Coach Musselman, for a great season. We will get a national championship soon enough. You are the man to get us one. Keep up the great work. Great job this year."
I love that.
And Tracy Richardson offered this, "Proud of this team. Where I see the program going, Razorback sports are looking good. All of them are looking good and making me proud. Thanks to this wonderful team of fighting Razorbacks and their coaches on a great season. Never count them out. Woo Pig." And again, I picked those 3 because they're pretty representative of those all came from our Pig Trail Nation Facebook page.
Yeah.
And there were just dozens and dozens of comments like that. And when I went through it yesterday, there weren't any negatives. Nobody was like, come on, why didn't they do this? Musselman should have done this or that. None of that. So I think Hog fans understood that this team overachieved, that they won a lot of games on pure guts. That's what Nolan kept telling me when we talked to him. They're winning these games because they refuse to lose. And I think that really sort of sunk into our fan base. They understood it, they could see it, and that's why they liked this team so much.
Yeah.
And they liked the transfers that came in and kept thanking them. We
Yeah.
came here to get into the NCAA tournament, and you helped us do it with the support in Bud Walton, and now you supported us in the NCAA tournament when a lot of other fans didn't, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, it was nice to see that, because you see all the negativity in other fan bases, and it's so
You usually get
nice.
these snarky comments, you know.
I know.
Or you get the crazy comments like the guy from Gonzaga who wanted the FBI to investigate the refs. That's a little over the top. I don't think you're going to get the FBI to investigate college referees.
I think the FBI
Not unless you can prove they were throwing the game.
I think the FBI have a little bigger things to do, right?
Than that, for sure.
Well, Dr. Starks asks, do you know how Coach Muss is viewed by the other SEC coaches? He seems to be complimentary of every coach he goes up against, but I haven't seen the same respect reciprocated. Is that because they don't like that the Hogs have become nationally relevant again, and that scares them?
Well, I can't say that I've talked to any other SEC coaches about how they feel about him, and they probably wouldn't tell you the truth anyway.
No.
I have talked to some people who cover other SEC programs, and they have told me, one in particular, and I'm not going to name the coach because if I didn't hear it, I'm not going to put his name associated with it.
Right.
But I was told by one reporter who covers a specific team that this coach really was mad at Musselman because of all of his social media, and he didn't like the fact that he said his Facebook and Twitter stuff was all about him, Coach Musselman. Now, any of us that have read that stuff knows that's a silly charge, because on his posts, he's all about Arkansas, he's all about the brand, he's all about the fans, he's all about the students. He's passing out compliments left and right. It's very seldom about him himself. So I don't know where that's coming from. I can just give you a guess, and that is a lot of these other SEC coaches are old school, and they don't do social media the way he does.
Right.
In Arkansas, last time I checked, they had the most number of social media engagements on their various sites than any school in the country.
Yeah.
And Musselman's way up there. He's just ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And the fact is, that's how you recruit these days. That's a big part of recruiting.
Exactly.
So it's part of what he said. I think they're worried maybe that he's got an edge in that respect, and they don't necessarily know how to do it.
I think there may be a little jealousy there, too.
If you don't know how to do it, get somebody on your staff that does.
Exactly.
Let them run your website.
He's definitely doing it right ahead of the curve. And the other thing is, and I just saw the other day, Musselman doesn't maybe tweet, out on his social media all the time about his players, but he responds to highlights by ESPN and things like that and tags the player and goes, great play. He'll break down the play and why what they did was correct out there for everybody to see.
And he responds to a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook. Like if they say, hey, if you'll do this, if you'll get a shout out, I will go to the game.
Exactly.
I will go to Buffalo, or I will go to San Francisco. And he's right back in there going, okay, here, and then he's puts it on them. So again, he's very interactive, and he doesn't just put the stuff up and forget about it. He's interactive with the fans out there.
Yeah, he responded to me and Alyssa when we were in Buffalo, telling us where to go out to eat. So
yeah, it's great.
It was great. Schmoove1, I hope I said that correctly, wants to know what happened to Connor Vanover when he decided to transfer to the Hogs. His California highlights were great. He ran the floor pretty well and was deadly from the perimeter. His regression is just confusing. We've got this question quite a bit, haven't we?
I think what happened was when they brought him in, because he sat out a year, I think they tried to turn him into an interior player. I mean, he's 7'3", 7'4", he's grown some. That's the natural thing to do.
Right.
And especially from a defensive standpoint, I don't think it ever worked. He's not particularly mobile with his feet. And so when he's one-on-one with the other team's center, I think it's pretty easy to maneuver around him.
Yeah.
You're here, he's here, you just go around and go with the layup on the other side.
Right.
I don't think his hand-eye coordination is real good on blocking shots.
Right.
Or doing good defense, getting up and causing a guy to miss a shot. So I think Muss noticed that other bigs were scoring on him.
Yeah.
He didn't seem to maneuver himself very well in that situation either. He wasn't scoring a lot of points inside. He seemed to have trouble kind of turning around. And,
Yeah.
I know early on there were a lot of complaints. Why didn't you just dunk it? And he didn't. He didn't dunk a lot of times when he could have. And he was trying to develop that little looping shot, you know, that little small hook shot, and it just didn't work for him. And then the other thing that happened, and this was the biggest thing I noticed, was that in trying to turn him into an interior player, his three-point shot just stopped going. And I think maybe that was a lack of confidence. He's trying to do something they're asking him to do, and he's not successful at it. So it hurts your confidence in the one thing you do really well. I think all of us figure he's probably going to go somewhere else. And maybe he's going to go somewhere that can use a 7-foot 3-inch perimeter player where he can sit out there and shoot threes. How are you going to stop that?
You can't really, right?
I mean, he's a pretty big target when you're passing the ball around the perimeter to find him, and how are you going to block his shot? So I don't know. Maybe he can land in the right place, and they can let him be what he is naturally instead of trying to turn him into an inside player that he's clearly not.
Exactly. Well, Alex for Hogs 88 says Gonzaga is a private Jesuit university in a conference that it just dominates year after year after year. What if it joined the Pac-12 conference and becomes more battle-tested throughout? Would they possibly have more success in the tourney?
Well, not that we care what happens to Gonzaga, but I do answer every question. So I'll say this. That's a little bit misleading to look at their conference schedule, because if you go and look at who they play, they do play a really tough non-conference schedule. Their non-conference schedule, when you throw that in, it was about as tough as Arkansas. So they do have ways of getting around the fact that they don't play in a Pac-12 type conference.
Right.
But yeah, if you want to get technical, if the Pac-12 at some point becomes the Pac-16, and it probably will. If I were them, I'd try to get in.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I'm not sure about. I don't know that they have a well-rounded enough overall athletic program or the budget
to join a conference like that.
To join a conference like the Pac-12.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it's ever going to happen. They're kind of probably stuck with what they are, being that private Jesuit university.
Yeah.
And they should just accept it. Again, I don't think the fact that they're not advancing has anything to do with the conference they're in, because they play tough teams.
Yeah.
They just, at some point, they've always failed to advance. Maybe it's like Eddie Sutton said, if they keep going, maybe they'll click with the right players at some point and win it all.
I mean, look at it. I mean, they haven't not had success in the tournament. They've been to, what, 7 straight Sweet 16s? That's insane.
Yes.
So,
it just points out what I said earlier. Once you get to that Sweet 16 level, every time you advance a game, it gets tougher and tougher and tougher. And I remember in the national championship year, you just kept going, whoa, 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 and they just kept winning and winning and winning. And then when they beat Duke, when it was over, I had a hard time processing it for a while. I saw all the celebration going on, but I'm walking around that arena going, did this really happen? It's just, it's remarkable how hard it is to win those 6 games. And again, you go back to all the great coaches that never did that. They came close, but didn't win it. And Eddie Sutton was a good example of that. I think he was frustrated because he didn't get that one national championship, but he came close.
And that's why they call it March Madness, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you have to go against that. So at Mousetown wants to know, is DVH sending a message with some of his comments lately? Stuff like, we're playing okay, but not setting the world on fire. 2 weeks into SEC play, Arkansas leads the West by 2 full games and has the 2nd best overall record, but he doesn't sound happy.
Yeah, I don't know if he's sending the fans a message. You'd think with his own players he could do that, and he may do that privately, but he is sending a message, and I think it's something we all can see, which is they're sitting pretty good right now. But look who they've played. They've played the bottom team in the entire SEC, which is Kentucky. They swept them, and they're right there at the bottom. They're the 14th team in the overall standing in the SEC.
Right.
And then they played, I'm sorry, it's not Kentucky. It was the team they just beat, Missouri. They're 14th,
Missouri,
and then Kentucky is close to the bottom in the East. And I think he's looking at who they've played, and then I think he's looking ahead when we start playing SEC West teams. And the reason Arkansas is up there right now is because the West has already started to cut each other apart. They're already carving each other up. And I think he's looking at that and going, what's it going to be like when we start playing those teams? Let's look at what some of the issues are.
Yeah.
Some of it is not starting pitching, but bullpen, and it's really just in specific games. In 3 of the 4 games that they've lost, they've had 1 inning that's just been a disaster. And I'm not going to name the guy because I'm not trying to embarrass anybody, but there's one pitcher in particular, one reliever that struggled in those games.
Right.
And it happened again in the 1 loss they had against Missouri.
In Missouri, yep.
So there is issues with the bullpen. I think that's solved by the fact that Van Horn is trying to figure out who his best bullpen guys are.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of young guys. So Tigert, for instance, he was fabulous. He got 2 saves.
Absolutely fabulous.
And really pitching in a difficult situation in that Sunday game. So now you're seeing him and you're going, okay, we bring him in. This is maybe our closer.
Yeah, this is the guy.
Can be our closer in maybe 2 games on a weekend. And it's tough to do it twice. So this weekend was a real test for him. Can I use him to close on a Friday?
Right.
Can I use him to close on a Sunday? Yeah, I think I can.
Yeah.
So that solves the problem. But he's still got to figure out who's first out of the bullpen. Who should I avoid from here on out? Who does what, when, where, and how? That's just solved by observing how these guys are playing in situations or pitching in situations in games. The real issue here, and I've been talking about it all year,
I know you have,
is hitting. And statistics are deceiving. You can look at certain guys and you're saying, well, God, he's batting 380. Well, this guy's batting 320.
Yeah.
This guy's got home runs. This guy's got a lot of RBI. How many times have they stepped up with the bases loaded and 1 out and failed to deliver?
Well,
And
quite a few.
We've got some good hitters on this team that have not delivered in key situations. And then you got a guy like Braden Webb, and we talked about him. He started off 0 for 22 off the year and couldn't get anything. And we're thinking, man, this guy can't stay in the lineup. All of a sudden, he started to deliver. Now, he's still batting just a tick over 200, like 204 maybe.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have the RBI of some of these other guys. But he has started to step up in key situations, and he did it twice in the Missouri series. He did it Friday, I think, in the 8th inning with a 2-run home run that was the difference in that game.
Yeah.
Then he comes back with a 2 RBI double, I think, in the 7th of the Sunday game. Again, that's the difference in the game. So you look at him and you say, he may have been the difference in getting swept or winning 2 out of 3. So, you know, I've looked at guys before, last year, the year before, a lot of Dave Van Horn teams. You'll see guys come to the plate, and maybe not one guy, but there's a combination of guys. There's 3 guys coming up. You figure one of them's going to step up because they come to the plate with that swagger and that attitude. Hey, I'm fixing to break this game open. You don't get a feeling with that right now with some of these guys. So I think that's what he's worried about. That's the message he's sending is, we have to step up in these situations. We can't leave the bases loaded. We can't leave runners at second and third when we had no outs or 1 out. We got to get some runs out of this, or we got to get more than 1 run. We need 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So, again, I think it's a message in advance of the schedule getting a lot tougher than it's been so far.
I think so too. And we said it in the Pig Trail Nation show the other day that, hey, there might be a message to the way he, you know, at the end of the Missouri series, we didn't even get a press conference until he was on the bus leaving.
It was almost like he didn't want to, they had just won the series and man, it was in doubt. So you think he's happy.
Yeah.
Well, they had to catch him on the bus to do the Zoom, and he's sitting there with that laptop in front of him and doing it. You can't hear him very well, but it was almost like somebody talked him.
And the bus was moving. It was leaving.
It was like somebody talked him into it. Come on, coach, you got to talk to the media. Okay, I'll do this.
So let's move on. More baseball questions. Game 2 of the Arkansas-Missouri baseball series, Mike Roberts says, pitiful calling behind the plate.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Now, again, it wasn't bad the entire game, but here's what I think happened there. Those guys had a 2-run lead.
Yeah.
We get to the 9th inning. Arkansas's got a guy on first with 1 out. So you could potentially, if you get another couple of hits, you could tie that thing up.
Yeah.
It was cold out there. The whole series, I've been there before. This is a place where it's windy and
Yep.
and the stands aren't made
Yeah.
right, and the wind just whistles through
Yeah.
there. And you're down there on a field. It's cold. This umpire's
is.
been out there all afternoon.
Game long.
And it's like, whoa. And it looked like to me, we talk about subconscious things with the referees.
We just
and
spoke
umpires.
about that, yeah.
I'm thinking maybe he's out there going, man, I want to get out of here. And so he doesn't realize what he's doing. But what I noticed is the strike zone, which had been consistent throughout the game,
Yeah.
got a lot bigger.
A lot bigger, yeah.
There were 2 quick strikeouts at that point. And that's where, again, I think umpires, referees, or whatever can influence a game
Yeah.
and not even know it.
Yeah.
You know, you're not aware that you're doing that,
But you're just trying to get home, right?
Suddenly your strike zone gets a lot bigger, and I do think that's what happened in that
Yeah.
game on Saturday.
Yeah, just trying to get out of the cold. You can't blame him on that one, right?
Nope.
Yeah, nope. Terry Hilton asks, why do batters look into the dugout at Van Halen, LOL, we haven't heard that one for it, to get their signal? I have never seen this before. They usually get it from their third base coach. Thanks.
Well, when Dave Van Horn was the third base coach,
Right,
yes,
yeah.
they got their signal from the third base coach because he was the third base coach. I can't remember when he switched,
Yeah.
but at some point he stayed in the dugout and let his hitting coach become the guy
yeah.
at third base. But he didn't give those responsibilities to that hitting coach. He kept the responsibilities.
Right.
So that's why you see them looking over at him. And honestly, for the right-handed batters, it's a lot easier because
Yeah.
now they've switched dugouts. It's the
Yeah.
left-handed guys that have to turn around and look over here now. But yeah, when he moved from third base to home to the dugout,
Yeah.
when Arkansas was batting, he still continued to give the signals to the batters himself.
So there
that's
you go.
why that's going on.
There you go. There's your answer, Terry. Well, last question for the show. Rob S. 4516, sorry, couldn't read that one, wants to know, you've obviously become a Razorback fan during your time in Arkansas. That's definitely true, Mike. But what are your thoughts on Texas Tech? Still a big fan?
Yeah, this may take a little while. I'll try to go through it as quickly as I can. Until I was about 8 years old, the only sporting events I'd ever been to, my dad played men's fast pitch softball, which was an amazing game to
wow.
watch. These guys were playing real. That softball is not the little lob pitch, crazy stuff you see today.
Yeah.
It was a rough and tough men's game, getting fights,
Oh.
people mad in the stands, all
Wow.
kinds of stuff going on. And I grew up as a little kid, 5, 6 years old, watching my dad play in those things. Went to high school football games and basketball games. That's what I'd seen. My grandfather comes down from Indiana, and he's used to going to, he'd go up and watch Cubs games. He'd get on the train and Monon Railroad and go up to Chicago and drop him off right in front of Wrigley Field, watch a game in the afternoon, come back. My dad did that a lot as a kid.
I love that.
So he felt like I was athletically deprived as a fan. And so he came in one fall and with the express intent of taking me to a college game.
Okay.
So I go over to Lubbock. They're not even in the Southwest Conference at that point. They're in the Border Conference. I think they may have been playing New Mexico or New Mexico State. But I get in there, and I'd never seen 40,000 people before at a game.
Yeah.
And the band is better, and the cheerleaders are better, and the guy comes out on the black horse, the masked rider, and they ride around, and they're doing all this stuff. And I'm just like, wow, this is so cool. So I had a buddy who was a farm. He grew up on a farm. His dad was a farmer.
Okay.
He was a big sports fan, but he was the only Razorback fan in my hometown.
Oh, wow.
There wasn't people couldn't figure out how this happened. He couldn't even explain it. And it was when Frank Broyles got hired. He just liked what they were doing.
Yeah.
So he was this big Razorback fan. And I said to him, we got to start going to these college games. And he said, well, how are we going to do that? That's too far away, blah, blah, blah. I said, look, my mom never needs an excuse to go to Lubbock to go shopping. And I've already talked to her.
I love that.
If I can raise the money to get in, she'll take us over there and drop us off, go shopping, and come back and pick us up. We don't even have to walk through the parking lot. We're just right there at the gate. So I got a summer job mowing lawns. He worked for his dad on the farm moving irrigation pipe, and we saved enough money. And I think a general admission ticket was $4. So we could very easily save up enough to go to the home games that year.
Wow.
But when we went to these games, I'm like Texas Tech, he's more like, what's going on with Arkansas? He'd want to check because they'd flash scores on the scoreboard. He'd be checking that out. But he was a very knowledgeable sports fan, and he was fun to watch the game with. And then on those every other year occasions when Arkansas came to Jones Stadium in Lubbock, he'd be like all over Arkansas. So, and he'd be talking to their fans. And one of the things I noticed when you talk to Arkansas fans, these guys were really smart. They knew a lot of basketball, a lot of football, a lot of names. They knew the Texas Tech players. And they're very familiar with them. So I was impressed with that. So now we do that all through high school, and we go off to college. Now, why didn't we go to Texas Tech? Because we could not afford it. It cost more to go to Texas Tech than it did North Texas State, where we ended up, because North Texas State had the cheapest tuition in the state of Texas. 12 hours, $53 my first semester.
Wow.
Can you believe that? $53 for tuition. The state of Texas really supported those schools back then. So we go there. Well, once we get there, we run into this guy, Roland Murray, from Abernathy, which is just north of Lubbock, and we had played high school football against him.
Oh, okay.
We knew his name, but we didn't know him.
Okay.
Well, my buddy Eddie runs into him in class one day at a class. He said, guess who I met? Roland Murray. And I go, really? And he goes, yeah. And he's a big Razorback fan. So he starts coming over to our apartment. Well, what Roland, his deal was, his grandfather is from Ashdown, Arkansas. He was a timber farmer or something.
Oh, wow.
He cut timber or something. I don't know.
Wow.
And he was a huge Razorback fan. So Roland was. This was 67, 68, and 69. Bill Montgomery's the quarterback at Arkansas. And they start going to every Arkansas game that's in the state of Texas, which is about every other week. So on that weekend when Arkansas was playing in Lubbock or Fort Worth or Austin or Waco or whatever, they load up the car early Saturday morning and take off. Well, I couldn't go with them. I had a job. But one particular weekend, I was not working for some reason, and I went with them to Fort Worth. So we get down there, and we're the first ones in on the visitor side, and we sit down up there. And, of course, they're there to watch the Razorbacks. I'm just kind of there. Well, this one guy is sitting there, and he's the first Arkansas fan I ever met from Arkansas.
Wow.
Not my buddy who grew up in Texas. This guy's a true Arkansas fan from Arkansas. He was awesome. He had a flask. He had bourbon. He was mixing bourbon and Coke and giving it to us. And he starts telling us about this RV that he's getting. You got to see my RV.
Okay.
So in those days, if you kept your ticket stub, now you can't leave a game, but you could go out as long as you had your stub.
Nice.
So we go out into the parking lot, and he gives us a tour of his RV, and it's got Arkansas all over it, and it's got these speakers on the roof, and it's got an 8-track player. You probably don't know what an 8-track player is, but it's an old-fashioned form of audio tape.
Okay.
And he had this 8-track player, and it had all these Razorback songs on it with a fight song, and he had that song Short Squash Texan that he played.
Oh my gosh.
And we're just out there laughing at this guy. It's just awesome. So after that, I just went around talking about him for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now, flash forward, I'm out of college, I'm out of the military, I'm working in East Texas, covering high school during the week, and then going up on weekends and covering the Dallas Cowboys, Texas Rangers. And I don't like it. And I told my buddy from Arkansas, my buddy who was an Arkansas fan, Roland Murray, I told him, I said, I just don't like. I said, Tom Landry's not any fun to be around. These players like Bob Lilly and all these guys are jerks. They don't seem to be having a good time. I want to go somewhere where it's all about the game. And he said, man, you got to go cover Arkansas in Arkansas. I said, I can't do that. There's one TV market there. It's Little Rock. What am I going to do? I can't cover them from Little Rock.
Wow.
He says, no, there's this Fort Smith station, I think. So it so happened that I knew a guy that was the GM up there.
Well, there you go.
So I called him, and I said, hey, look, I want to come up and cover the Razorbacks. He said, we don't have a job like that. We got a job up there, but it's a news job. And I said, if I take that news job, can I cover Arkansas on my own time? And he said, yeah, I don't care what you do on your own time, but you got to do the news work first. So I worked it out where I'd come in the morning, generate news stories, get that all done, and then I'd go in the afternoon to cover Arkansas.
Wow.
I'm around Frank Broyles, who's awesome. All these coaches like Jimmy Johnson was just great to be around. He was hilarious. And then I'm around all these terrific fans. It only took me part of one season, especially when I went to that A&M game in '75, which is the most awesome thing I'd ever seen in my life at that point. 53,000 Razorback fans cheering defense over and over and over again, and they beat the stupid Aggies, which I hate the Aggies. I mean, after that game, I just went, I'm not leaving here. These people are like me. They don't like Texas. They don't like A&M. They're great fans. They're plugged in.
Yeah.
This is a great place to be. I'm right there in Fayetteville where I need to be, and I'm around all these coaches like Frank Broyles and all these guys, and Eddie Sutton was the basketball coach. I just said, I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
My buddy, on the other hand, one of them went back to Lubbock, and over the years, he became more of a Texas Tech fan. I don't know how that happened.
Okay.
And the same thing with Roland, whose I think his grandfather passed away. The longer he was down in Texas, maybe he got influenced by the people around him, but he became more of a Longhorn fan. I'm
Weird.
like, what's this all about?
Huh.
So, yeah, I started off here, Texas Tech, Arkansas here, and now I've done like this.
Yeah, you flipped.
And my buddy in Lubbock kind of flipped like that. Now, I did call him.
Oh.
After the Duke game, and I said, well, you know, they did to us what they did to you guys. And he goes, I know. He said, I can't stand Coach K. I hope somebody beats him. I go, yeah, we don't like him, do we?
No, we don't.
And I said, yeah, but everybody talks about what a great guy he is. But I said, we've got this new sportscaster working for us, and her dad is a basketball coach, and she says that he's not the nice guy you think he is, so you tell us your story.
Yeah, no, he definitely is not. You know, I feel like the reason why he gets that nice guy persona is because when he's around Division I coaches, right? You're around D1 coaches. You're around the guys that you have to work with all the time. But, you know, when they're all put together in a room, Division I, Division II, Division III, my dad's a Division II coach. You know, when he went up to him, he's like, oh, Coach K, that's really cool. And he asked him, well, where do you coach at? And I tells him, you know, I coach here. And he goes, is that Division II? And he goes, yeah. Well, why are you coaching there? Oh, well, not all of us can be Division I coaches, Coach K. So,
and I think you also told me your dad did that for the family because he knew the family liked it
exactly.
there. He had a
my
good
dad,
job situation.
Yeah, my dad, good friends with Leonard Hamilton over at FSU. And when Leonard was in Miami, you know, Leonard was like, who's this guy out recruiting me? Who's this guy getting all of my recruits to go somewhere else? It was my dad. So, you know, he said, look, if you ever want a job with us, I mean, he had a path to go.
But he didn't.
But he didn't. He didn't choose to do that. And I probably wouldn't be here if
he raised you on the beach.
And he raised me on the beach, but now I'm in Arkansas.
So you benefited from that. So we don't think Coach K is the nice guy everybody says he is, and we want him to be gone. Plus, I'm convinced that this story came out about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I've heard it before, these claims by Zion Williamson's former agent, who I guess he dumped that agent, and then that agent was mad, and now is claiming that they've got evidence that he was getting, you know, paid, and his family was getting impermissible benefits. And there's a lot of people speculating, what is the NCAA going to do anything about this? And what I keep hearing is, well, not while Krzyzewski's there.
Nope.
When he leaves, maybe they'll come in and hit the school and say, but he didn't know anything about it because they don't want to ruin his image. So, yeah, if you're a Duke fan, you can like Coach K all you want. I know a lot of Razorback fans want them to win it all, so you can say once again you lost to the national champion. It wouldn't bother me if they lose their first game in New Orleans at all. I'm not a big Coach K fan.
I'm not either.
And I've been around the Dukies too in the 95-94 national championship game. I was around the Dukies, and I don't like them.
Hey, Dad,
nope.
I'm a big person that's down with the Blue Bloods, right? We need some other teams.
I've actually been to their campus. I've been to Cameron Indoor. We were looking for it one day. We're driving around while we were covering a tournament in Greensboro, an NCAA Tournament regional. We went over there to find the place, and we couldn't find it. And we're kind of lost. And we see this Duke student. He's walking by, and we go, "We're looking for Cameron Indoor." And he's like, "What are you, tourist?" We go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, it's right there." We turn around, and there's this goofy-looking building that looked like just an ordinary on-campus building. I go, "That's a basketball gym?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah." So we went inside. Cooler on the inside than it was on the outside, but really, honestly, nothing special.
Yeah.
So we've been to Cameron Indoor, and I didn't go gaga over it.
Oh, I
like Barnhill better, old Barnhill.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Arkansas's facilities, I think, are much better than other places around the country. But that's it for this week's edition of Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.